Hey class, Prof JC here, and I'm really excited about the mental model that we're going to talk about this week. Again, every single week we're looking at this idea of mental models. It's that they're not ideas; they actually exist. They're out there, and mental models, as we've talked about, is how we learn how to think better, how we learn how to think differently. You are in the position in life because of the choices that you've made. Okay, and many of you probably are really proud of that. You're proud of the choices you made. You're proud of the decisions you made. But some of you on the call may not be, right? You're looking at your life and you're thinking, I don't know if I like this, right? I don't know if I like where I am. Well, everything that you have around you, the life that you've built, is 100% because of the choices that you've made. And I'd say the same thing for an organization, for a team, right? If you look around a team, you look around an organization, things aren't necessarily what you want them to be. I would say to you as the leader, especially if you're in a leadership position, it's the choices that you've made. It's the choices that you've allowed to be made within the organization that has gotten the organization to where it is. I'm a huge believer that everything rises and falls on leadership, right? So mental models are our way of understanding how we think, because we all have mental models even now, right? And they could be great mental models, they could be not so great mental models, right? But that's what we're talking about this, so I can introduce more mental models, to you, so you'll be able to make decisions in a better way moving forward. So a mental model is when we take information in. Typically, we go from what we've said this before already: information to emotion to decision. Okay, that's typically how it works for most people, especially people who haven't thought about this. They haven't thought about how to make good choices in life. What we're trying to do with mental models is move from information mental model to decision, right? So we take out the emotion, we take out our feelings, right? Most of our feelings don't really help us make good decisions. At least that's what I found in my own life, that feelings don't typically help make good decisions. So we take out the feelings, we take out the emotions, we replace a mental model like systems thinking or first principles or creative destruction or whatever it may be, and we run whatever the information is that we have, we run that through a mental model, and that gets us to the decision. I want to introduce a mental model to you today that I think could be one of the greatest mental models that you could possibly consider. But this mental model, okay, is not actually a listed mental model. You're not going to hear any billionaires talk about it. You're not going to hear any millionaires talking about it, any CEOs. They're probably not going to talk about this one. But I believe that this mental model that we're going to talk about today could be the greatest mental model for you in every aspect of your life, in your personal life and in your professional life as well. So let's just get right to it, okay? I want you to think of the word love. Okay, Love. We just came through the kind of the love season, right? Valentine's Day and all that. We're getting ready to head into the Easter season. We're already in Lent, okay? And so when we think about the spiritual aspect, of what we're doing, again, a faith-based university, it's important that we talk about this. When we think about the spiritual aspect of kind of who we are and the education that we're coming to the table with, this word love should be at the top of your list. But here's the deal: we all have different definitions of love. Okay, my hope is that by the end of this video that we will coalesce around a specific definition of what love is. But the reality is all of us have a definition of love. When I say the word love, it conjures up images in your mind. It could be a song. You might be thinking of a love song, right? I grew up back in the 80s and 90s, and so I grew up in the days of the power ballad. And nobody sang power ballads. Well, I don't want to say nobody, but I remember one of the biggest voices in adult contemporary music back in the 80s and 90s was a guy by the name of Michael Bolton. Okay, Michael Bolton. If you were born in late 90s or in the 2000s, whatever, you probably don't remember that name, but that's a name. He sang all the power ballads, all the good ones, right? And there's also some other people. I'm thinking about Teddy Pendergrass, right? You go all the way back. I'm thinking about Luther Vandross. I'm thinking about Lionel Richie, who I think is one of the greatest crooners of our time. I grew up in Indiana, so a lot of country, right? So Kenny Rogers was really big, and in the 90s it was Garth Brooks and some of these singers out there. So anyway, it could be music, it could be poetry, it could be whatever. When I mention the word love, you may think of a specific person. You might think of a family member. You might think of a partner that you have. You might think of your spouse. You might think of a friend. I don't know, whatever it is, but it conjures up different images and definitions for us, right? So I want you to think about what your definition of love is, okay? So I want you to think about that. Now, I want to give you a different definition of love, and this is going to be the mental model that we're going to talk about this week, okay? There's a gentleman by the name of St. Augustine. He lived hundreds of years ago. He was a Catholic priest, and here's the definition that he gave for the word love. So here we go. Love is seeking the highest good for the other. Love is seeking the highest good for the other. Okay? Now, typically when we think of love, we think of emotions. We think of, right, everything we just talked about, songs and music and feeling pain and, all that kind of stuff. And all of that are aspects of love. If you've ever been in love before, it can drive you crazy, right? Especially if you don't fall in love with the right person, it can drive you madly crazy, right? Which is where all the blues songs come from, right? So it can, it can drive us crazy. It can drive our emotions, it can drive our emotions, crazy. And some of that is a part of it, right? There's an element of meeting someone. It could be a friend. It could be a lover, whatever, but you meet someone and there's something about that person that brings some butterflies to your stomach. You get excited to see this person. There's elements to that. But as we've learned with mental models, if we make decisions based off emotions or feelings, oftentimes it will lead us into some pretty poor decisions. You've probably experienced that before. I know that I have in my own life. So we want a mental model. This word love, again, I think could be. Now, I want to talk about two different forms of love, and then I want to get back to this idea of seeking the highest good. In life, there are two different forms of love, and this is important for you to understand. Okay. Now, again, this is a faith-based university, so I'm coming at this from a faith-based perspective. Okay. Our next mental models that we'll get back to more of the business ones, but I think this is so important for you just to consider as you're moving forward in business and in leadership. Two different forms of love. The first form of love is called eros love, right? So again, faith-based. So if we think of an idea of God up here, we're down here, and people out here, God up here, we're here, people out here, right? Eros love begins here, and it goes outward, and it goes upwards. So it starts with me, and it goes up and out, okay? And that's key for you to understand. It starts with me. There's another form of love called agape love, and that's agape love that starts down, and it moves in our direction, right? So it doesn't start with the self. It starts with God. It starts with the higher power, right? Maybe you're not a Christian on the call today, and I respect that. So we would say it starts with a higher power, and then it moves its way down, okay? Now, here's the definition. Here's the most important difference between the two, not the definition, but the difference between the two. Eros love always begins with me. So that means that when I come into a relationship with somebody, I'm always thinking about what can they do for me, okay? What can this organization do for me? What can this person do for me? What can this opportunity do for me? It's all me-based. That's eros love. Agape love, okay? It's love that comes from God down to us, love that comes from others down to us. It's much more centered around on what's best for other people, okay? So when you think about agape love, again, eros love is self-centered. It's about us. Agape love is others-focused, okay? If you have agape love for somebody, you can have agape love for a friend. You can have agape love for a partner, a spouse. You can have agape love for your employees, and it's not inappropriate love, okay? Again, when we think about this idea of love in the workplace, it makes us a little bit nervous, right? I can't believe we're talking about this mental model of love. I can't walk into my workplace and tell my employees that I love them, right? And you probably shouldn't, and you probably can't, you probably shouldn't, but you can think it on the inside if you have this mindset of agape love, which is love that moves outward, not inwards, right? It's not you based, it's not me based, it's not selfishly based. So the term, going back to this idea of love is seeking the highest good for the other person, that goes back into this idea of agape love where it moves out. It's not about me, right? It's not centered on me. And I may have defined that a little bit differently, okay? The eros love and the agape love. I would say that, I guess the best way to put it is the eros love is centered on myself. The agape love is centered on other people, right? It's more of a God-like love, which is seeking the highest good for somebody else. It's not just about you. So I want you to consider this, okay? And if you change your definition of what love is to, it's not about me anymore. Now it's about my partner. Now it's about my husband. It's about my wife. It's about my kids. I'm a father. And if you're a father on the call today, if you're a mother on the call today, you probably more than anybody else, if you're a good mother, a good father, even if you're a decent mother, a decent father, you understand love, right? I used to work in the kind of the in the system, the foster care system, and one of the things that we would say is oftentimes some of the worst parents most often love their kids the most. They just didn't know how to show that love, right? And it was very much an eros kind of love. It was a very selfish kind of love. It wasn't agape. It wasn't seeking their highest good. It was very much about them, right? But they still loved their kids, right? But they weren't seeking the highest good, right? So there are different kinds of love. If you were to change your perspective of love and you were to come and say, you know what, I want to move from an eros kind of love to an agape kind of love, a love that seeks the highest good, it will change. I promise you this, it will drastically change everything in your life. So we do family check-ins in my home, okay? And I've got my wife and we've got all of our daughters, okay? And typically it's 3 of our daughters that are together. I have 3 daughters, she has 2 daughters, but typically in our home it's her 2 daughters and then my youngest daughter. And so we come together and we do family check-ins, and one of our values is love based on this definition right here, seeking the highest good for the other person. And it is fascinating as we get our children who are 7, 10, and 12, as we are doing the best we can to have them change their mindset about love and looking for ways every single week to do the highest good for other people. It's amazing the stories that we begin to hear in our family check-ins. And we try to check in maybe 2 or 3 times a week. We definitely check in on the weekends. And it's amazing to hear the stories that come in as they're now considering, and they're almost like competing with each other. How do I show love for somebody else? How do I seek their highest good? Now, in our family, we also say this, and that's a whole nother podcast. We don't have time for this. Love is seeking the highest good for yourself and for others. Because we can't lay ourselves down at the altar for other people. But if it's always the highest good, and again, I want you to think about that as well too. If it's the highest good, then, and we could go in, we could talk for hours about this. We don't have that kind of time to talk about this. If you're seeking the highest good, it's not about what's right now. Right? It goes back to these mental models. You think about long-term thinking. Highest good means the highest good. It's not about, so for instance, if I am, when I get off work tonight and I'm driving home, okay, and I'm driving back and I'm really, really hungry, and I could go home and I could make myself a salad and I could have some chicken or I could have eggs or something like that, or I could stop by Chick-fil-A on the way home and grab a Chick-fil-A sandwich and get some of their waffle fries and that kind of stuff. Now, which one sounds best to you? Obviously, the Chick-fil-A sounds great, right? What's the highest good? The highest good, if I'm in that position, I'm saying, well, the highest good is to get home, save some money, eat some good healthy food, which is the salad, and eat maybe some oven roasted chicken and eat some vegetables, whatever, versus what feels good right now. So again, when we're thinking from this perspective of the highest good, we're not thinking about the right now. We're not thinking about ourselves. We're looking at any situation. We're saying, what is the highest good in this situation? As a leader, we're looking at our team and saying, what's the highest good for our team? Not what's going to make them feel good at the time, right? A lot of times, if we're not careful, we come to the table and especially as leaders, we want to be liked by the people that we lead, and so we make decisions that will make them like us more. But it's not really in their highest good. Okay, for the organization, for our customers, for our clients, what's the highest good? There's a great story in a book that I was reading a long time ago, and it's all about sales. And the book, one of the things I appreciate about this book, it's a sales book. I think it's by Zig Ziglar, but he encourages people, if you want your sales to go up, you have to know what the customer wants. And as the salesperson, you want to sell that person a $50,000 car, but what they might need and what they want, what their highest good, what they really need and what they want is that $7,000 minivan at the back of the lot. A great salesperson understands it's not about what I want, it's about them. It's their highest good. What's best for them and their finances and their future is to make sure that they drive away in that $7,000 minivan versus the $50,000 suburban SUV that I want to put them in. It's always about the highest good. So again, when you begin to think this way, so when you tell someone I love you, it's no longer you-centered. I love you because of the way you make me feel, right? I love you because of what you can do for me. I love you because of this fuzzy feeling I get. That's all about you. That's you-centered. In the future, when you're able to say, I love you because of because of the commitment I'm making to you. I love you, and what that means is it's forward facing. What it means is I'm always committed to seeking your highest good. So that means for my partner, for my spouse, for my children, for my team members, for my customers, for my clients, for my organization, if that's the mindset I come to the table with every single day, I'm consistently seeking the best for you. That's my biggest prayer as a professor, is to always seek the highest good for students, and that doesn't always happen. I had a class I was teaching recently, and we had a midterm project that the different groups were turning in, and I offered, hey, reach out to me if you need some specifics on how to make this work, and it didn't happen that way, and I had to give everyone C's, right? I had to give everyone C grades, and I remember sitting there struggling with that. That night I said, you know what, I could just bump everybody up, and I could give everybody maybe a B or a B plus, and then they'll like me. But then I realized in that moment, I said, you know what, as a professor, my job is to help these students get better. My job's not to be their friend. It's not to be hanging out together and make sure they like me. It's that they walk away from classes that they take and say, I'm a better leader. I'm a better business person. I'm better out there in the world because I spent time with this professor. And I realized that these papers had earned C grades, and so I had to give the C grades. And that's what leadership's about. And some people aren't going to like it, and some people aren't, but it's always about the highest good. Okay, it's not about you. It's not even about them. It's about the highest good. Okay, so that's all I got for you today. Here's the question that I want to leave you with. Okay, I want you to think about this in your own life. And I want to give you, it's typically what we kind of do. As you think about this, the highest good, and what you've listened to in the last few moments here, have there been moments in your life that or just name, from what you feel comfortable, name a moment in your life when you did not seek the highest good for yourself or somebody else, or for your team or for your organization, whatever it might be. Name a time when you did not seek the highest good, and what was the consequence? Okay, when you went into it, maybe you even had a mindset of, I love this person, but you were you-focused, right? Name a time like that. And it could be professional. Maybe it's a time that you weren't thinking about customer clients. You weren't thinking about your team members. You weren't thinking about how to make the product better, right? And then I want you to do the flip side of that. Name a time when you did consider the highest good for other people. And what was that situation like? What was the outcome of that situation? How did you feel in that situation? Most often when we're seeking the highest good for other people, it's not going to be comfortable for us. But when we look back on it and we see the results, we say, man, that's what matters. This is leadership, everybody. This right here that I'm talking about, this is leadership. If you get this, everything else will be a piece of cake for you. Okay? Seeking the highest good for other people. That's all I got for you today. I look forward to the next video. Take care. Reach out if you need me.